Welcome to today's reading from the Krishna book. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yesterday we were reading that Akrurji had come to take Krishna and Balram to Mathura, and the gopis were in a very lamenting mood already. The gopis began to imagine the great functions in the city of Mathura. Krishna would pass through the streets, and the ladies and young girls of the city would see him from the balconies of their respective houses. Mathura city contained different communities known as Dashara, Bhoja, Andhaka and Shatvata. All these communities were different branches of the same family in which Krishna appeared, namely the Yadu dynasty. They were all expecting the arrival of Krishna. It had already been ascertained that Krishna, who is the resting place of the goddess of fortune and the reservoir of all pleasure and transcendental qualities, was going to visit Mathura city. The gopis then began to condemn the activities of Akrura. They stated that he was taking Krishna, who was more dear than the dearest to them and who was the pleasure of their eyes. He was being taken from their sight without their being informed or solaced by Akrura. Akrura should not have been so merciless, but should have taken compassion on them. The gopis went to say, "The most astonishing feature is that Krishna, the son of Nanda, without consideration, has already seated himself on the chariot. From this it appears that Krishna is not very intelligent. Yet he may be very intelligent, but he is not very merciful. Not only Krishna, but the cowherd men are also so callous they are already yoking the bulls and calves for the journey to Mathura. The elderly persons in Vrindavan are also merciless. They do not take our plight into consideration and stop Krishna's journey to Mathura. Even the demigods are very unkind to us. They are also not impeding his going to Mathura." The gopis prayed to the demigods to create some natural disturbance such as hurricane, storm or heavy rainfall so that Krishna could not go to Mathura. They then began to consider, "Despite our parents and guardians, we shall personally stop Krishna from going to Mathura. We have no alternative but to take this direct action. Everyone has gone against us to take Krishna from our side. Without him, we cannot live for a moment." The gopis thus decided to obstruct the passage through which the chariot of Krishna was supposed to pass. They began to talk among themselves. "We have passed a very long night, which seemed only a moment, engaged in the rasa dance with Krishna. We looked at his sweet smile and embraced him and talked with him. Now how shall we live even for a moment if he goes away from us?" At the end of the day, in the evening, along with his elder brother Balram, Krishna would return home with his friends. His face would be smeared with the dust raised by the hooves of the cows, and he would smile and play on his flute and look upon us so kindly. How shall we be able to forget him? How shall we be able to forget him who is our life and soul? He has already taken away our hearts in so many ways through our days and nights, and if he goes away, there is no possibility of our continuing to live." Thinking like this, the gopis became more and more grief-stricken at Krishna's leaving Vrindavan. They could not check their minds, and they began to cry loudly, calling the different names of Krishna, "Oh dear Damodar, dear Madhav." The gopis cried all night before the departure of Krishna. As soon as the sun rose, Akrura finished his morning bath, got on the chariot, and started for Mathura with Krishna and Balram. Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men got up on bullock carts after loading them with great big earthen pots filled with yogurt, milk, ghee and other milk products, and then they began to follow the chariot of Krishna and Balram. In spite of Krishna's asking the gopis not to obstruct their way, they all surrounded the chariot and stood up to see Krishna with pitiable eyes. Krishna was very much affected upon seeing the plight of the gopis, but his duty was to start for Mathura, for this was foretold by Narad. Krishna therefore consoled the gopis. He told them that they should not be aggrieved. He was coming back very soon after finishing his business. But they could not be persuaded to disperse. The chariot, however, began to head west, and as it proceeded, the minds of the gopis followed it as far as possible. They watched the flag on the chariot as long as it was visible. Finally, they could see only the dust of the chariot in the distance. The gopis did not move from their places, but stood until the chariot could not be seen at all. They remained standing still, as if they were painted pictures. All the gopis decided that Krishna was not returning immediately, and with greatly disappointed hearts, they returned to their respective homes. Being greatly disturbed by the absence of Krishna, they simply thought all day and night about his pastimes, and thus derived some consolation. The Lord, accompanied by Akrura and Balram, travelled in the chariot with great speed toward the bank of the Yamuna. Simply by taking a bath in the Yamuna, anyone can diminish the reactions of his sinful activities. Krishna and Balram took their baths in the river and washed their faces. After drinking the transparent, crystal clear water of Yamuna, they took their seats again on the chariot. The chariot was standing underneath the shade of big trees, and the two brothers sat down there. Akrura then took their permission to also take a bath in the Yamuna. According to the Vedic ritual, after taking a bath in a river, one should stand at least half submerged and murmur the Gayatri mantra. While he was standing in the river, Akrura suddenly saw Balram and Krishna within the water. He was surprised to see them there because he was confident that they were sitting on the chariot. Confused, he immediately came out of the water and went to see where the boys were. And he was very much surprised to see that they were sitting on the chariot as before. When he saw them on the chariot, he began to wonder whether he had mistakenly seen them in the water. He therefore went back to the water. This time he saw not only Balram and Krishna, but many of the demigods and all the Siddhas, Charans and Gandharvas. They were all bowing down before the Lord. He also saw Lord Sheshnag with thousands of hoods. Lord Sheshnag was covered with bluish garments, and his necks were all white. The white necks of Sheshnag appeared exactly like snow-capped mountains. On the coiled up lap of Sheshnag, Krishna was sitting very soberly with four hands. His eyes were like the reddish petals of the lotus flower. In the other words, after returning to the Yamuna, Akrura saw Balram turned into Sheshnag and Krishna turned into Mahavishnu. He saw the four-handed Supreme Personality of Godhead smiling very beautifully. He was pleasing to all and was looking toward everyone with a merciful glance. He appeared beautiful with his raised nose, broad forehead, attractive ears, and reddish lips. His arms reaching to the knees were so strongly built, his shoulders were high, his chest was very broad, and his neck was shaped like a conch shell. His navel was very deep, and his abdomen was marked with 3 lines. His hips were broad and big, resembling those of a woman, and his thighs resembled the trunks of elephants. The other parts of his legs, the joints and lower extremities, were all very beautiful. The nails of his feet were dazzling, and his toes were as beautiful as the petals of the lotus flower. His helmet was decorated with valuable jewels. There was a nice belt around his waist, and he wore a sacred thread across his broad chest. Bangles were on his hands and armlets on the upper portion of his arms. He wore bells on his ankles. He possessed dazzling beauty, and his palms were like lotus flowers. He was still more beautiful by the different emblems of the Vishnu Murti, the conch shell, disc, and lotus flower, which he held in his 4 hands. His chest was marked with the particular signs of Vishnu, and he wore fresh flower garlands. All in all, he was very beautiful to look at. Akrura also saw his lordship surrounded by intimate associates like the 4 Kumars, Sanak, Sanatan, Sanand, and Sanat Kumara, and other associates like Sunand and Nand, as well as demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva. The 9 great learned sages were there, and also devotees like Prahlad and Narad and the 8 Vasus. All were engaged in offering prayers to the Lord with clean hearts and pure words. After seeing the transcendental personality of Godhead, Akrura immediately became overwhelmed with joy and great devotion, and all over his body there was transcendental shivering. Although for the moment he was bewildered, he retained his clear consciousness and bowed down his head before the Lord with folded hands and faltering voice. He began to offer praise to the Lord. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 39th chapter of Krishna, Akrura's return, journey and his vision of Visnuloka within the Yamuna river. Chapter 40. Prayers by Akrura. Akrura offered his prayers as follows. My dear Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you because you are the supreme cause of all causes and the original inexhaustible personality, Narayan. From your navel a lotus flower grows, and from that lotus Brahma, the creator of universe, is born. Since Brahma is the cause of this universe, you are the cause of all causes. The elements of this cosmic manifestation, earth, water, fire, air, ether, ego, and the total material energy, as well as nature, the marginal energy, the living entities, the mind, the senses, the sense objects, and the demigods who control the affairs of the cosmos, are all produced from your body. You are the supersoul of everything, but no one knows your transcendental form. Everyone within this material world is influenced by the modes of material nature. Even demigods like Lord Brahma, being covered by the influence of material nature, do not exactly know your transcendental existence beyond the cosmic manifestation of the 3 modes of material nature. Great sages and mystics worship you as the supreme personality of Godhead, the original cause of all living entities, all cosmic manifestation and all demigods. They worship you as all-inclusive. Some of the learned Brahmanas also worship you by observing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. They offer different kinds of sacrifices in the name of different gods. And there are also others who are fond of worshipping transcendental knowledge. They are very peaceful, and after giving up all kinds of material activities, they engage in the sacrifice known as Jnana Yajna, the philosophical search for you. There are also devotees known as Bhagavatas who worship you as Supreme Personality of Godhead after being properly initiated in the method of Pancharatra. They decorate their bodies with tilak and engage in worshipping your different forms of Vishnu Murti. There are others also known as Shaivites, followers of the different acharyas, and worship you in the form of Lord Shiva. It is stated that in Bhagavad Gita, the worship of demigods is also indirectly worship of the Supreme Lord. But such worship is not orthodox because the worshipable Lord is Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan. Demigods such as Brahma and Shiva are incarnations of the material qualities, which are also emanations from the body of Narayan. Actually, there was no one existing before the creation except Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The worship of demigod is not on the same level as the worship of Narayan. Akrura said, although the minds of those who are devotees of the demigods are fixed on the particular demigod, because you are the supersoul of all living entities, including the demigods, worship of the demigods indirectly goes to you. Sometimes after flowing down from the mountains during the rainy season, small rivers fail to reach the sea. Some reach the sea and some do not. Similarly, the worshippers of the demigods may or may not reach you. There is no guarantee. Their success depends on the strength of their worship. According to the Vedic principles, when a worshipper worships a particular demigod, he also conducts some ritual for Narayan, Yajneshwara, for as it is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. The demigods cannot fulfill the desires of the worshippers without the sanction of Narayan or Krishna. The exact words in the Bhagavad Gita are Mayeva Vihitan Hitan, which means that the demigods can award some benediction after being authorized by the Supreme Lord. When a demigod worshipper becomes to his senses, he can reason as follows. The demigods can offer benedictions only after being empowered by the Supreme Lord. So why not worship the Supreme Lord directly? Such worshipper of the demigods may come to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but others who take the demigods as all in all cannot reach the ultimate goal. So we will continue from here onwards tomorrow. And now we finish our reading how Akrura, when he was taking Krishna and Balram with him towards Mathura, on the way when they stopped in Yamuna, even though Akrura ji thought that both Krishna and Balram were sitting on the chariots, but they were sitting, he saw them sitting inside the Yamuna. Not only that, he saw the Shesh Naga and the Mahavishnu form of both Krishna and Balram in the Yamuna. So we can see how what should I say, how blessed Akrura was that he had the vision of the Visnuloka within the Yamuna river. So I wish you all a very happy Ekadashi, and see you all tomorrow. Thank you, Narayan Keshav Prabhu, for watching. Hare Krishna.